Chapter 17. The Next Day. The storms from the night before had passed, leaving a cloud bank that was tinted deep purple as the morning sun lit the sky. Corey stared at the brightening horizon as he waited for the bus. Yesterday's locker room attack left no marks that others could see. Using 2 mirrors and a great deal of stretching, he did manage to get a look at the large bruise on his back. The lasting scars were on the inside. He would not admit it to Ellen, but he was afraid to get on the bus. With the possible exception of Dawn, no one at school seemed to think it unusual to beat someone up just because they were different. The first part of the ride would be the worst. The bus would start out nearly empty, but would fill quickly. With each stop, more students would get on, walk past Corey, and talk to each other just loud enough to let him hear. At least when Don got on the bus, he would have someone to talk to, and he wouldn't have to hear the others. The bus slowed at the Rains' driveway, and the driver switched on the red flashing lights. Corey was more nervous now than he'd been on the first day of school. With the screeching of brakes, the bus came to a stop, and the door opened. Corey took a deep breath and stepped up and into the bus. He didn't see Ellen at the window of the farmhouse, peeking from behind the curtain. "Hey, nerd, want a donut?" "Don, what are you doing here?" "I guess I just wanted to see what the boonies looked like this early in the morning." Corey took the seat next to Don and stuffed a jelly donut in his mouth. Don had to have gotten up at least an hour earlier than usual to be on the bus already. "You didn't have to do this, you know." "I know, but I'm glad you did." "I know." Don reached in his pack and handed him a folded piece of paper in the shape of a triangle. "Here, it's from Kim." "Not again. Just read it." Corey unfolded the note and began to read. "Corey, I'm sorry about what happened to you in school today. Those guys are jerks, and I'm glad they got kicked out of school for a while. You're still the weirdest boy I've ever known, but that's no reason for someone to beat you up. I was thinking that maybe we could be just friends. Kim." Corey folded the note and put it in his backpack. "You know I'm never going to fit in, don't you?" "Why do I get the feeling that you don't even plan to try?" "Nope, not going to change a thing." "You're a stubborn little nerd, aren't you?" "Deal with it." Corey grabbed another donut. "I never told you, but I saw you out there." "Out where?" "Out in that chicken place. It's called the Barrens." "Whatever." Don took a bite of his donut. "My mom dragged me to Plainfield to see her boyfriend's pool tournament, and we took a shortcut. At least it would have been a shortcut if we hadn't gotten lost. Anyway, we ended up going past the Barrens. I saw this bike leaning up against a big wooden sign and then saw you out in the middle of a big field." He turned to face Corey. "You were just sitting there." His voice made it clear that he didn't understand why anyone would do that. It was almost like you were in church or something. "I like being out there. I can't explain it. I'd like to think that, at least with you, I wouldn't have to try." "Look, you go ahead and be as weird as you want. The way I figure it, everybody's weird in one way or another. You're just stupid enough to let people know about it." "Thanks, I think." The bus pulled up to the school, and Corey reluctantly got out of his seat and headed inside. The halls were as crowded as ever. Kids were digging in their lockers, teachers were standing in the hall drinking coffee, and the PA was making announcements that everyone ignored. In other words, it was a normal morning. Corey dumped his jacket in his locker, grabbed his books, and quickly went to his math classroom. He had expected the harassment from yesterday to continue, but it didn't. No one seemed to remember that just 18 hours earlier he had gotten beat up for being different. As other students came into the classroom, they looked at Corey, but no one teased him. A few even said hi. "Hey, nerd, what are you doing in here?" It was Don. "We got 6 minutes before class starts. Let's walk the halls." "It's probably better if I just stay here." "Get your butt out of that chair and let's go." As Corey walked down the hall with Don, no one noticed him. Kim smiled and said hi, but everyone else found him as interesting as the paint on the wall. Corey was relieved. At this point, being ignored was a good thing. The warning bell rang, and they headed to their first hour class. Math and science passed without incident. Ms. Osseo was putting up a bulletin board as Corey walked into the library third hour. She was standing on a small stool adjusting letters across the top that spelled out, "The Land Down Under." "Hi, Corey. How are you feeling?" "I'm okay." "Good. Could you give me a hand with this?" "I guess." "If you hand me those pictures, I'll staple them up." "Cool pictures. Did you take them?" "Thanks. They're from my trip to Australia last summer." "What's this one?" Corey held up a picture of a large, red-tinted hill completely devoid of vegetation. "That's Ayers Rock. It was one of my favorite places on the whole trip." "Looks like a neat place, but what is it?" Ayers Rock is in the Uluru National Park, which is in the Northern Territory of Australia. Uluru is the Aboriginal name for it. Geologically, it was formed about 550 million years ago in the Precambrian era. Over time, erosion sculpted the rock into the shape you see here. For the Anangu, the Aboriginal people of Central Australia, it's a spiritual place, she continued. It's important for the dream time, or Jukurpa. What's that? Jukurpa is a religious philosophy. It's how the Anangu answer questions about the meaning of life. Corey carefully spun the large globe next to the bulletin board and said, "That sounds a little strange." "Well, not really, if you think about it. People all over the world have places that are spiritually important to them, places they go when they're looking for answers. If you were to walk into any church in this town, I bet you'd find someone sitting quietly, just thinking. They could sit anywhere, but they choose to sit in church. The point is, it's the place that they find important. Have you ever heard of Mecca or Mount Fuji? Yeah. Well, if you were to do a little research, you'd find hundreds of places like that all around the world that are spiritually important to one culture or another. Corey handed Miss Osseo the last of the pictures. "I have an aunt who goes to Graceland every year. Is that the same thing?" "On a personal level, I guess it is. I think people have more of a connection to certain places than they are willing to admit. I have a good friend who goes to Door County almost every weekend. She sits on the same rock and stares out at Lake Michigan. It's her own version of Ayers Rock." "It still seems a little weird to me." "Tell you what, I'll pull some books that might do a better job of explaining it. You could always do an internet search. I'm sure there's a ton of stuff on the computer." "No way. I can't stand to use those stupid things." Miss Osseo just laughed and shook her head. The rest of the day was boring. Corey liked it that way. While he was sitting in homeroom, Miss Osseo walked in with an armful of books. She went straight to Corey's desk and said, "We're shutting down the library for the year in a few weeks, so you'd better get to work." Corey smiled. Not only did he have the books he wanted, but also the library was closing. If the horned larks were the first sign of spring, the library closing for inventory was the first sign of summer vacation.